당동마 잘남균이 신신난겐게 다
First of all,
겸내 긴둥인데 준바도
I would like to offer my greetings to the members of the Sangha, the monks and nuns listening over the internet, as well as all of the Dharma friends and male and female lay people who are listening to these teachings. I offer you my warm greetings.
지주에다 지주에 라망업주바디 마슈야 도스르바
And so we are having this spring teachings, and we're discussing the 50 verses on the Guru. So we have today, and then we have the last day on the 28th. And then we will complete the 50 verses on the Guru. And so for that reason, I thought I'd like to continue with what I was speaking about yesterday. I gave some examples of stories about some gurus who served their teacher, and among them, one whom I didn't explain, who remains, and that is the one who, in the history of the history of this glorious Dhakipaju, the one who has had the best example of serving the Guru, serving or respecting the Guru, and this one is Param Dharma Wangchuk. Param Dharma Wangchuk was one of the four disciples of Gampopa who upheld his lineage. So among them, one of them was Param Dharma Wangchuk. And likewise, he is also well known as we have the four elder Kagyu lineages, the lineages that descend directly from Gampopa and his nephews, and so they're called the four elder Kagyu lineages. Now, this term, the four elder Kagyu lineages, did appear prior to Jamgon Kodo Lodotai. There are some scholars who said it's originated at the time of Jamgon Kodo Lodotai, but this term was used actually prior to Jamgon Lodotai. We don't need to speak too much about that. In any case, among the four elder Kajus, one is the Param Kaju. The founder of this was Param Dhamma Wangchuk. Now, his birthplace was in Pempo. So Pempo is like the origin of the source of the Kagyu teachings. Even to this day, in the region of Pempo, there are many Kadampa monasteries. From a young age, Param Dhamma Wangchuk, from a young age, had great devotion for Gampopa. He had faith for Gampopa. And so, for that reason, so even before he had a devotion, even before he met Gampopa. So when he reached the age of 7, one day there was a woman with a beautiful face, with a nice complexion, wearing the clothes of a Dakini, and she had a retinue of 13 with her. So she came along with her retinue. And so Param Dhamma Wangchuk, he was 7 years old. He was still very young. And he realized she was a little different. And he asked her, "Whose student are you?" And the woman replied, "I'm Dapo Nigom's student." So Dapo Nigom is another name for Gampopa, right? Basically, she said that she is Dapo Nigom's Gampopa's student. Now, Param Dhamma Wangchuk said, "How can Gampopa have any women around? He doesn't have any women in his retinue. Don't lie." And so the woman, she sort of smiled a little bit. And she said, He said, it's just possible that I am a little better than Gampopa. And so the Dharma Wanchuk, he was a very young, he had such great faith in Gampopa, and he was really displeased. And he found his playmates, there are a lot of his playmates, and they started to throw dirt and stones at the women. So they threw dirt and stones at them, but the woman didn't get angry. Not only did she not get angry, what she said was, you have a lot of attachment to Gampopa, don't you? You have a lot of feeling for Gampopa. So for that reason, there must be a particular karmic connection between you and Gampopa. This is what she said. And when she said it, then Barompa got immensely happy. He was incredibly happy. And then that night, he thought, then, I'd like to meet Gampopa. So that's when that began. Not only that, one day, in his dream, he saw like a swirling white light coming from the east, and it dissolved into his heart. So this is a dream that he had. And so Dharma Wanchuk, when he got to an appropriate age, he went forth, and there was like Geshe Chayula, the one who I mentioned the other day. So he followed Geshe Chayula and many other Kadampa gurus. Now, Geshe Chayula, as I said before, had been a guru of Gampopa, and also in Rechumpa's life stories it talks about. So he said that that Rechumpa secretly followed Geshe Chayula. But according to the Kadampa masters, he was very strict about the Vinaya, and he was a little bit, how do we say, he was very kind of narrow, very strict about that. He wouldn't, if they didn't, so he was so strict about this that he couldn't follow it. And so in secret it says that Chayula followed Rechungpa as a guru in secret. So it's Chayula who followed Rechungpa as a guru. In any case, Dharma Wanchuk followed many Kadampa gurus, including Chayula. It was only when he reached the age of 21 that he met Gampopa. Now, at the time that he met him, there was a 10th day Ganachakra. Now, most people, when we say a 10th day Ganachakra, most people think that it's probably a Guru Rinpoche puja. But of course, a 10th day puja can be on the 10th day of the waxing phase and the 10th day of the waning phase. So it's not just Guru Rinpoche, but also the day that we have the Vajravarahi Ganachakras. And so there's this very strong practice this in the Kagyu lineage. So it was when Gampopa was holding the 10th day Ganachakra that he met them. And the moment that he saw Gampopa's face, Baram developed excellent meditation in his being. And again, certainly that the Guru Gampopa was an actual Buddha. Now, at that time, the Guru Gampopa did as Milarepa had done before. At that time, since he was during the Ganachakra, he had a skull cup filled of beer. Now, Baram had never drunk before, but on that day, because Gampopa was giving it to him, he thought it was siddhi, and he drank it. And so this made a nice interdependent connection. And Gampopa was pleased and gave him many empowerments and pith instructions gradually. In particular, Baram served as Gampopa's attendant for tea, bedding, and so forth. In these days, we call this like his chamberlain, or his chamberlain, or his private attendant. So when he's offering tea, he would serve in the day to serve tea and so forth. In the evening at night, he would prepare his bedding and so forth. And so Baram did all of this. and serving the guru.
나바르도
In particular,
다다 바rum바 쳔비에게 다보르 무시게 꾸수어 팅 가시게 루규요레.
there are also stories of Barum protecting Gampopa's life, saving Gampopa's life a few times. One time how this happened is one time Gampopa had been invited to Lhasa. It's probably the region of Lhasa or to Lhasa. In any case, on the road, the person who was leading the horse was Barum Tamawonchuk. And on the road, they met a mad dog. And somebody had like probably rabies or something. And so it had its mouth open, showing its fangs, and it came. But when the dog came, everyone else in Gampopa's retinue ran away. Gampopa thought he must not that mad dog bite the guru or the horse. It wouldn't be right if it did. And so he took the guru had a cane walking stick. So he had been carrying that, and so he kind of he made a loop out of it, and he wrapped it around the dog's. He kind of tied it like a knot around the dog's neck, and in the front of them there was a river, and they threw the dog into the river. Now Gampopa said, "Oh, it's so difficult for sentient beings." He said, the poor sentient beings," he said. It's very suffering for them. But it's probably that mad dog has probably been recovered from its illness, so bring it back. Now the mad or the rabid dog, Barum had thrown him with a cane. The dog vomited a lot, and it's like he got over his illness. Then Gampopa said, "Today, you've defeated the demon who is making obstacles, so you should really meditate on great joy." And then at that point, all of the other attendants gradually came. They'd fled to the hills, and they all took Gadaran. The guru disbanded and sat on the top of a boulder, and he explained to all the people. They rested, and he told all of his retinue, all the attendants. He told them stories, and the story that he told them was how when the Lord was attacked by there was a time that Devadatta sent a crazed elephant to attack the Buddha, and at that time all of the monks, all the bhikshus except for Ananda fled. So he told that story. And he also told many other stories from the Buddha's previous lives. And then he said that the way that Barum acted these days, it's very similar to those examples from the life stories of the Buddha. As if it weren't for, if he wouldn't have protected me, it would have been very, very difficult, he said. And there's that cane, as I said before, like that cane staff that, now normally a cane is, if someone got to tie it, like make a lope out of that, like no, this is really hard, you can't do it. You have to put it in high and heat it, and then you can bend it. It's not something you can just bend easily. But that day, it's like sort of showed a sign of his accomplishment, and he was able to bend that. Now that bent staff used to be in Barum in the math, and then later the Karmapatana took it as a half, and he left half of it there, and he took half of it with him as like a source of blessings, was a support for his practice. And this story is told in the life story of Jonang Kongha Joljok. And that's the only time. Thapor Rinpoche came from the area of Takpor, right? So the Dakpo Rinpoche Gampopa was invited to Dakpo for a consecration ceremony. And basically everyone in the Dakpo region gathered there, like many monks had come there. And when they're doing the consecration, you have to complete that. So you have to complete the consecration. So you have to, there are many things that you need. And so the consecration water, offerings, flowers, tormas, and colored powder. And everyone wanted to see if they could get some of them. And they really crowded in to do that. Gampopa said, don't do that. But no one listened. The public didn't listen. And they really crushed forward. And they're crushing the forward. Then Gampopa was just about to be crushed under the crowd, under the stampede. And at that time, it was such a huge crush then that Arampa immediately rushed forward. He carried Gampopa and he picked him up and he carried him and escaped from the crowd. And Gampopa said that this consecration became really dangerous. If it weren't for you today, these troublemakers would certainly have killed me, he said. And so that day, he also saved the Guru's life. He protected the Guru from danger. So Barom, it thought that the Gampopa would get crushed and killed by the people, and so he carried him and he took him in his arms and carried him in front. And his Dharma friend said, we've all got a little bit of this colored paper and things like this. Everyone had a little bit something that they got, right? All of his Dharma friends had been off in the crowd, or they would have been rushing forward, right? He said, we got this, and they said, and so what did you get, they said. They asked Barompa. And Barompa said, I got the Dharmakaya. The Dharma friend said, it's true that you got the Dharmakaya. It's definitely, no doubt with you that Rinpoche would no longer be alive. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And all his Dharma friends felt like great joy and devotion. There are several other such stories about how Barompa, and of course he attended Gampopa, and he saw he was properly, but not only that, he also saved Gampopa's life a few times. Now, there was at one point, just before Gampopa was going to pass away, what Gampopa said to Barompa was, now you should go to this, there's this pure hermitage in the north called Baram. It's in the same mountain range without any break as Mount Kailash. You should go practice meditation. And he gave him a measure of gold, and he said, now, I don't give such gold to anyone else. But you and I have been like father and son. I've been like a guru and disciple. We've been together for a very long time. And you have, without any concern for your body and life, you served me over and over again. And you've never gone against my word. And so today I'm going to give this guru. So at first, use this so that you can use it for your livelihood. And then later that people will come and provide you with your sustenance. Now what Barompa thought to himself at this point is, I've met this precious Guru who is like the Buddha himself come to earth. I've had the opportunities to serve him for many years. I've received pith instructions from him that have really touched my heart. He's really looked at me very kindly, taken care of me very well. There's no one who is more significant or more kind than Rinpoche in this entire world. But I've had this dream that Rinpoche would pass away and go to Sukhavati, so probably, maybe Gampopa is going to, he might pass away. And particularly he's come to an advanced age. And unlike before, he's giving many more instructions and teaching more. So I've several times, and just regarding my own life, I have rescued him from obstacles to his life without regard for my own body and life. And I've never displeased him even a moment. Now, perhaps even though he wants me to stay with him, and just for him to say that I should go to a mountain retreat, is probably he's saying this with an ulterior motive. And even if it isn't, if I go to another place and then while I'm gone, Gampopa Rinpoche passes away, people will say, Param stayed with Rinpoche for so long. Well, he was just about to pass away to Nirvana, then he wasn't there. And people wouldn't say that. It would be something that people would criticize him for. And I myself would also, it would be a basis for me to regret later. So I must continue to serve him. So I have the feeling that I really need to continue to serve him as much as I can. Some people want to serve him, but he doesn't really. But we don't know whether Gampopa really wants to have anyone else as his intendant. So in any case, I can't bear to part with him unless he has passed away. Otherwise, there's no way I could bear parting from him. So thinking that, he said to Gampopa, said, as long as you're still alive, I'm not going to go anywhere else. And he prostrated him. And he remembered all the kindness and all the blessings that he'd received from Gampopa. And he remembered all these situations, so many tears came to his eyes. And he said to the gold, he says, I don't need the gold that you have given me. And then Gampopa said, the gold that I've given you, I've already given it to you. It's no longer mine. So I've given it, but if you want to make an offer of it to me, then by the auspicious cognition of doing that, then there will be many offerings of gold and such will come to you. Now, and also, I'm going to give you all of the texts that I have. Now, Parampa said, I don't need texts. I have no thought that I'm going to be like a teacher to others or become a guru to others. So the kindness of the precious Guru that I know how to practice for the practices I do. So I don't need the texts. The fact that you don't think you're going to be a teacher to anyone else and that you don't need the text is a sign that you actually need all those texts. And so if I give you the text now, then it's appropriate for me to give them. And so Gampopa gave almost all of his texts to him, gave the transmissions for them. He said he'd already given all of the instructions, so he didn't give any particular instructions then. He also gave him like 3 measures of wealth, or basically he gave him some presents. He gave 3 different types of gifts. He said, don't say you don't want these. In the future, if you in the future ever go to a place where you have to plow your fields with your own fingernails, then you will not lack for food and clothing to wear. Even if you beg in the realm of the hungry ghost, you'll find warmth. You'll find food. So you don't need to worry about whether you're going to find provisions for your practice, because I know it myself. And you shouldn't think to yourself that you haven't made material offerings to the gurus. Because what pleases me is the offering of practice. I don't really like the offerings of material wealth, he said. And so you should stay with me for another 30 days as father and son. And so after about 30 days, then, so after Gampopa Sim, he stayed for another 30 days. And at the end of that, then Gampopa passed away. And after Gampopa passed away, they made the stupa, the stupa for his remains. And so Barum stayed until that had been completed. So he stayed for a fair amount of time. Then after the reliquary stupa was built, then he went off. He'd reached the age of 28. So he left Dalha Gampo and he went to Barum in the north. And when he got to Barum, there was one person who came to bring him supplies, and except for that one, he stayed in a place where no one else could ever say them, and he devoted himself to practice. He developed many qualities of realization and experience. He had such great compassion that wild animals such as the bottle, wild sheep would circumambulate, and birds of all sizes. It was like I'd protect him to the end. They would like watch over him while he was sleeping. The birds would protect him to make sure that no one would disturb him, so that there wouldn't be any disturbances. And sometimes they would come and perch in the palm of his hands. Also in the morning, he said, when he woke up, the Dhakas and the Dakinis would awaken with the sound of Damaru drums. And so he had to wake up to the sound of these drums, he said. In any case, later he guided many disciples, and because of that, there developed what became known as the Barum Kagyu tradition. Even today, the lineage continues flourish in northern Barum, in Nangchen Chodra, and in other places. So among the gurus and lamas in the Dapo Kagyu, this is the best example for serving the gurus, Barum Dharma Wangchuk. So next, I'd like to speak about the 50 verses itself. So, and if we talk about the 50 verses and according to Lord Tsongkhapa's outline, we've come to the 8th. We were in this passage on how to be respectful, and this has 8 topics. And the one we've come to today is the 8th, not acting independently. Now, not acting independently has 4 subtopics. The first of these is asking permission when acting for others' sake, offering the gains from such activities. The second. The third is not accepting respect from others in the Guru's presence. And the fourth is being extremely respectful in your physical behavior. Now, among them, the first of these is asking permission when acting for others' sake. Now, asking for permission when acting for others' sake, the root text of this topic is, when the Guru is in town, don't perform mandalas, fire pujas, or consecrations, do not gather students and teach them without permission. So to give an explanation of this, first of all, we'll take it according to the interpretation of the Sanskrit commentary. What a consecration means is when you bring the deities to enter into the stupas, statues, paintings, texts, and residences, and so forth. And so this is causing the deities to enter the sacred object. Like when you have a stupa, if you have a statue, that is the subject. So you have the wisdom deities dissolve into, this is what we mean by a consecration. Or you can, or this is also when you have painting or whether you have a sand painting, this can be understood as Radha. Now, fire puja means when you're making fire offerings. Fire pujas are well known, right? Teaching is teaching the Dharma. It's spreading the Dharma. And gathering students means and so it says here to gather students, right? So primarily means to give empowerments to the students. So it's giving students empowerments to the students. So this it says the empowerments in the kind of this is giving empowerments, giving transmissions, instructions, and so forth. And there's the without permission, says it. It says that there's with no permission. So only if the Guru gives permission. Otherwise you may not do the activities that we mentioned before. And so it says in town, or in the area, in town. So think about what time and what place. The place is in town. The town means the town where the Guru resides. The place where the Guru resides, or where they stay. And so do not means that the student should do that. When it says do not, it says that they should. When the Guru is in town, then you should not do this. And what this means is that if you have not got the permission from the Guru, then and so you should not perform things like empowering others or consecrations or mandalas and so forth in that place while the Guru is in that place. Now, if you have the Guru's permission, then whether the area or the town where the Guru is, then you may give empowerments and consecrations and so forth. So this is the interpretation in the Sanskrit commentary. So here, I'm showing you the comparative chart of the Sanskrit, Tibetan, Chinese, and English. Now, if you take this according to Lord Tsongkhapa's commentary, it's easy to understand. And generally, the Tibetan commentaries are easier to understand than the Sanskrit commentaries. So Tsongkhapa's commentary says that when we are performing consecrations or mandalas, that is empowerment. So a mandala here means empowerment. Or you're doing the fire pujas and teaching students and so forth. And then if the Guru is in the area, if the Guru is present in that area, then you need to ask for permission. Say, please, may I give this empowerment? You need to ask for permission. And if the Guru gives permission, then it's okay to give that. But if the Guru does not give permission, you may not. If the Guru is not in the area, then it's unnecessary to ask for permission, he says. So the main point is that in this place, in the area, in the old days, in the place, like probably a small area. If it's the Gurus in the country, you might think we don't think it means that. It means in the old days, it's basically it's not so easy to travel. So if the Guru was in place, if he was in a town, then in that town, the student should not. Students should perform mandalas or consecrations and so forth, or fire pujas. So it means if you're near the Guru, if you're in a small area, if you're nearby the Guru in a small area, and if the student needs to perform a consecration or raise a mandala or do a fire puja and so forth, if that happens, if the Guru is present in that area, then you need to ask permission from the Guru. The reason is because while the Guru is in that, if you act as a guru, you pretend to be a guru, as you might, you might pretend to be a guru out of pride or think out of competitiveness and think, I'm really something, and do it out of competitiveness. It's possible that that might happen. And if that does happen, that's not okay. So you absolutely must ask for the permission from the guru first. Now, if the guru is not in that town or that area, then you do not need to ask for permission, is what it's saying. Now I'll continue. It says, whatever you gain for consecrations and so forth, give it all to the guru. And so this is offering the gains from such activity. It says, whatever you gain from consecrations and so forth, give it all to the guru. So what this is saying is that, now here in the Tibetan it says actually opening the eyes. It says, so the spelling is probably the spellings of it in the Tibetan. In any case, opening the eyes, the main point is that it means consecrations. So if you look at here, the center, the pratishta, it means consecration. So the saying opening the eyes and consecrations are synonyms, but they're different terms, probably. In any case, pratishta, it means consecrations. So the Sanskrit commentary itself says consecrations. So if that student, when giving a consecrations, so it's connected to the previous stanza, if they have the permission from the guru, and you're in they're in a single town, the student and the guru are in the same town, and the student has to perform a consecration. Since the guru and the disciple are in the same town, the student needs to ask for permission from the guru. Once they receive the permission, then you may have their consecration. But if they do the consecration, there's the gains that you get from that. When you give a consecration or you fire off, then people will give you some offerings. And so all the things that you are offered, all of the offerings, that is, what should you do with them? So this is what we're talking about. So the opening the eyes or consecrations means consecrations and so forth. Consecrations and mandalas and teaching the Dharma and gathering students and so forth. All of the, no matter what Dharma activity you do, then all of the gains, the offerings you receive from that, what should you do with all those things or all those offerings? And says you should offer them all. It says you should give them all. It says you should give them all. And so it says a word here. It says after they've taken from what they. So it says after they've taken. So here. Mm-hmm. What it means is when the guru has taken from, when the guru has taken out of the things and offerings what they wish, and then the guru, you need to offer that to the guru. After the guru, then the guru is someone who've taken what they want, or have taken what they need, and if they've taken what pleases them, they accept what they like, and then everything else that's left over, the remainder. So what should you do with that? You should use it as well. So you can use it the guru, you can give it to others, but it comes up with, and so you can do whatever you like with it. So if you receive offerings, then the main point here is what it's saying here is that, and so when you're talking about if through the Dharma, If you gain offerings or respect or serving, then from within that, you need the guru you should give the guru whichever pleases the guru, whatever they like or whatever they want. Have the guru enjoy what it would enjoy what it wishes, and then you can use the remainder as you wish. You can keep it for yourself, you can give it to someone else. That's what it means. Now, if we take it according to Lord Tsongkhapa's commentary, it says opening the eyes. This is a synonym for consecration, he says. So whatever offerings you receive from that or from giving empowerments and so forth, you should offer them to your own guru. And Chozo Lotsawa said, when they have taken what they desire, is what it says. And this is similar to the Sanskrit commentary. So this is common to the Sanskrit manuscript. What it means is when the guru has taken what the students offered, whatever they desire, and then everything else, the student may use as they please. So he says that Chatla Lotsawa's commentary is closer to the Sanskrit commentary in the Sanskrit text. And now we will continue. And the third is not accepting respect from others in the guru's presence. Don't treat as students the guru's disciples or in the guru's presence your students. Prevent them from offering you service, rising, prostrating, and so forth. So first of all, to explain it according to the interpretation of the Sanskrit commentary, the first says don't treat, it says. It says they don't treat as students the guru's disciples. So the guru's disciples here means your own guru's students. The guru's students, you should not treat them as your own students. You shouldn't care for them as your own students. And you shouldn't make them into your own students. That's what it's saying. And it says, we're in the guru's presence, your students. So here, your students means your own students. The second line, the word your students, means your own students. Even if they're your students, when you're in the guru's presence, you shouldn't treat them as students. Prevent them from offering you service, rising, prostrating, and so forth. Think about what is the student do? So the students may not do the actions of a student to you in the presence of your guru, which means offering you service. So here, a service means like attending you, such as the various types of offering service and attending you, and prostrating and so forth. Now, according to this is what it says in the Sanskrit commentary is that you should prevent them from offering you washing, bathing, and so forth. But in the word itself, it only says prostrating. The commentary, it says that they're offering you bathing, but here we're talking about prostrating. And then when it's prostrations and so forth would include washing the guru's feet or the other ways of attending the guru. All of these are included in that. So the service of prostrating and so forth, you should not allow any of that to happen to you when you're in your guru's presence. Now, if you take this according to Lord Tsongkhapa's commentary, It means the guru's disciples. It says you shouldn't make the guru's disciples into your own students. You shouldn't make the guru's disciples into your students. And even if it's your own students, in the guru's presence, you shouldn't teach them dharma and so forth. Then you're not making the guru's disciples as your own students. What some panditas say if because of them paying respect to you, it decreases the guru paid to the respect paid to the guru whom you serve. The reason why you shouldn't make the guru's disciples into your own is that it would decrease the serve or the respect paid to the guru. The guru has many students, but you take them as your own students, and the guru has fewer people offer them respect and gives them difficulties, then you must not do that. So this is what Moshe Rinpoche says. But in the texts that are well, this is, or in the guru's presence, your students, there's the word or here. So it means that one should not teach the guru's disciples as students in the presence of the guru. And so there are people who say this. And so when your own students provide service such as stretching in robes or rising from their seats or prostrations, and you should prevent them from doing that in the guru's presence by saying, don't do that. So one way of understanding, don't treat the guru's disciples as your students, says that in the presence of the guru, you shouldn't make them the guru's disciples your students in the guru's presence. That's one way of understanding it. Now there's a commentary on the 50 verses by Sajjan Lotsawa. What it says there is that the guru's disciples should not be made your own students. And likewise, even if they are your own students, you shouldn't teach them dharma in the guru's presence. The reason why the guru's disciples should not be treated as your own disciples is if the guru's disciples pay you more respect and don't pay so much respect to the guru, then that's not to be done. This is very similar to what Tsongkhapa reported Moshe Rinpoche is saying. So as the stemmer says, in the presence of the guru, your own students should show you respect by dressing in robes, rising from their seats, or prostrating, and so forth. You should say, don't do that, and stop them. So I'd like to share a story to illustrate this, because if you hear a story, then you'll understand. Now, this story is like of the great Sakya scholar of Jamyang Khyentse Wangchuk of Nesar. That's of Jamyang Khyentse Wangchuk. This is not Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. This is Jamyang Khyentse Wangchuk. There's this guru who lived once. And he wanted to receive teachings from Sajjan Losar Gyatso. So Sajjan Losar Gyatso is one of the three Sakya Masters in Sadlo Azanglo Chasam. He's like the founder of the Sajjan. He's like the source of the Sajjan lineage. So Sajjan Losar Gyatso so he wanted to receive some teachings from Sajjan Losar Gyatso and discussed with first you have to speak with the stewards, right? Because at that time he was still young. So first of all, he had to speak to the stewards. And so I'd like to receive some teachings from Sajjan Losar Gyatso. And he asked him about this. And the Chansa gave him said, we'll do everything as you wish. However, they had a way of practicing the way that they do things. Before you had to get through the teachings, you have to examine whether it was good or not. You had to like a divination. So we have to have a divination first of all. And so when Jamin Khyentse Wangchuk asked the story of the great Gorumpa, Gorumpa the Kunga Lepe Lodre, and he asked for the divination. And when that divination happened, then he said, that is very good. If you go to Tsachen Losar Gyatso and receive teaching, that's very good. And so then as he had the division, he went to Tsachen Losar Gyatso and said to him very insistently that he had permission to give the teachings. But Tsachen and Khyentse Wangpo were both disciples of Gurumpa. Their guru was Gurumpa. So he was Tsachen Losar Gyatso's, and he's Jamin Khyentse Wangchuk's Lama. And so for that reason, what Tsachen said is, you're a student of my Lama, Gurumpa. What it says in the 50 verses, don't treat as students the Guru's disciples. So you're my Guru's disciple, so I can't treat you as a student. I can't teach you the Dharma. And he said that. And so he didn't accept. When he didn't accept, then what Jamin Khyentse Wangchuk, he wasn't sure what to do. So he went back to Venerable Gurumpa, his guru, and said, and asked him, please tell him to teach me. And Gurumpa said it's okay that you could do it. He said, I already said it's okay for you to take the teachings from Tsachen Losar Gyatso. He'd already done the divination. So the great Gurumpa said that. He said to Tsachen Losar Gyatso, it may be true in general that you shouldn't treat your guru's disciple as a student. It is said that. But isn't it also said you should do whatever pleases the guru? It says here you have to do whatever will please the guru. So if you give Tsachen Losar Gyatso my teaching, I'll be happy about that. If you Tsachen Losar give him the teaching, I'll be happy. So please give him the teaching. And when he made that, what then Tsachen Losar Gyatso said is, what he said was, he kind of jokingly, he said, I heard before that you weren't really a person. Now, that must be true. You're not really human. And he also said, and he said they just make some new, you're making a new tradition that the guru is preaching, because it's like you've made a stamping with the guru. You're making the guru, having the guru. You've started a new, previously unheard of tradition. He basically was joking with him. And so because he had the guru's permission, he said, so it's okay to teach you the Dharma. And so he accepted. And he gave you the White Tara long life instructions of the flow of one's water and many initiations, such as combining the 6 rays of light and so forth. And one day when they're having like a conversation, so Tsachen Losar Gyatso said, when you requested Dharma teachings from me, did you have a divination done? You must have had a divination done, right? So now no one else knew that he had done that divination. He said that only Jamin Khyentse Wangpo and the Lama Gurumpa knew about this. And so he says, so like it's kind of funny, it's kind of strange if you're asking someone doing a divination, if I should ask for a teaching from that. And so Tsachen Losar Gyatso said, you must have had a mode done. And so he got a little bit afraid about that because only he and his guru Gurumpa knew about that. So he got kind of afraid. So in the past we had this tradition, right? There's this custom that if you're going to, before you have the Dharma teaching, you do a divination to see whether you do it before. So there's custom, and I did it according to the custom, he said. And then he said, well, what was the divination? And he said, well, it turned out well. And so then Sergeant Losar Gyatso said, I had a dream. I had a strange dream too. I thought it was something like my father. I thought it was like my father. This person came to me. And this Dharma Lord from Nesar, this Lama from Lama, wants to request teachings from me. And he's doing divinations for that. I said, should we allow him to have Dharma or should we not allow him to have Dharma? He asked him in my dream. And so what I said is that, if it benefits the teaching, give him the teachings. If it won't help the teachings, then don't allow it. So if you look at it, it's probably allowed you to do it because you had the divinations, you had a good result on the divinations, right? So he thought it must benefit the Sakya teachings, right? And so at that time, Nesara was like, he was both afraid, but he was also really happy. In any case, at the end, Sergeant Losar Gyatso said, whatever you want, whatever Dharma teachings you get from Vajradhara Gurumpa himself, you take it. And you should get as many things, and I'll fill in the empty bits that you aren't able to get from him. So there are many such examples in life stories from the old days. For example, if the student was a guru, high guru or low guru, when the guru would go, in terms of making the arrangements for everything, preparing tea and food, making everything from the seat arrangements up, everyone would do as best as they could for the guru and offer them to the guru. And wherever the guru stayed or they traveled, in the old days, when the guru traveled in the old days, you had to prepare the horse, right? And you had to produce a residence from the sin. You had to prepare bedding and everything. The tradition is the student was just much, and they'd make as comfortable, as beautiful, as nice as they could. Likewise, when the guru's students and sponsors would come to you to prostrate to you and request you, you would have to say, you're my guru's students, my guru's sponsors, so it's not okay for you to treat me like that. And so when the guru's students and sponsors would come to you to prostrate and make offerings, it'd say you'd refuse them, prevent them and refuse the audiences. And also, if these are your own students, your own actual student, when you're in the presence of the guru, for example, the guru is on the throne, and then you're next to them, and then they're also your gurus. And for the students, then there's the guru, and then there's you, and then there are other students. And if everyone's come together, so at that time, if you prostrate to the gurus, right? You prostrate to the guru. And if they're going to prostrate to you, and they make offerings to you, then you don't let them do it. So in the presence of the guru, if someone does something that respects you as a guru, you shouldn't let them do it. And particularly when the presence of the guru at any time, you should never sort of like think of yourself as a teacher or a geshe or a kempo or think of yourself as something big. You should never accept any even sign of being. You should think that the guru is the greatest of the greatest and that you're the lowest of among the lowest. And so when you're in the guru's presence, you're saying, I'm the guru's student, you should not think that you're a guru at all. And you should have like a very humble position. And this is something that all the spiritual friends say is extremely excellent. But the difficulty is that the difficulty is for the great gurus and the important people. When you have the great gurus, high gurus, and important people, normally, so it's difficult. Who's going to prostrate to whom? And so who should accept this? And so when you make the thrones, like the height of this is very difficult. Because like there's the ranking and the heights of the thrones, and so it's not convenient for the guru, it's not convenient for the students, it's a very difficult situation. But when you are giving when you're being given empowerments, teachings, and message, so the student, then the great guru would have to do it. And if the student is like even a high lama or a great important person, then when you make the students prostrate and so forth, when you have them pay respect in a way that accords to the Dharma, it's important for it to have them do that. This is because sometimes what happens is so how do we say this? So if the student is a great student, it's like a very, you sort of say, how do we put this? He's saying, I'm not giving you Dharma, I'm offering the Dharma. It's like the sort of often, it's like, if you can accommodate, and if you're always trying to accommodate the guru, that's not very good. When you're teaching the Dharma, then you need to do it according to the Dharma. And this is in order for the greatness of the guru. It's not for the sake of the greatness of the guru, it's the greatness of the Dharma. So it's a way to bring out the greatness of the guru, that you should make them prostrate and so forth. It's a way to bring out this greatness of the Dharma. For example, when Chankya Rinpoche Dorje is the Gelugpa, a very well-known Gelugpa Lama, and he gave an empowerment of Chakra Samvar to the Chinese Emperor Qianlong. And so Gompa Qianlong, he was very well known. And so when he was giving the empowerment, the guru himself sat on a high throne, while the Chinese emperor sat on a low seat. And until the empowerment was done, the Chinese emperor knelt. And he was like, listened with complete attention until the empowerment was completed. So if the Chinese emperor would do this, then it's, of course, everyone else has to do it properly too. There's another story similar to this. The other day I told you a bit about the Rinpoche's journey to central Tibet and the difficulties he had. At that time, he went all over central Tibet. And I didn't tell you in detail about that because there was not time. Actually, at that time, when Rinpoche went to many places, and particularly he went to the seats of Lama Marpa and Ngok. And particularly he had like a tea worth a song of gold, and he went to Ngok's monastic seat, the Shungiru Chung, and he and at that time, there was Ngok Chukas Dorje, Ngok Shedan Dorje. So Ngok Shedan Dorje had even greater activity than Ngok Chukas Dorje. He was a very well-known Lama. So he provided very good servants, served him very well. Ngok Shedan Dorje had great admiration for Rinpoche, and so he thought he would ask for Dharma teachings. Now, while they're having a conversation, Rinpoche praised Tipupa, his own guru. He had the guru Tipupa in India, right? He praised him highly. But he didn't say much about Milarepa. And when he didn't speak about Milarepa, then Ngok Shedan Dorje kind of got a little bit, he got a little bit uncomfortable in his mind. It's like there's no guru who's been more kind to him than Lord Milarepa. But today he's just praising Tipupa so highly. But he's not speaking about Milarepa. It's like he has more faith in the India teacher than in J. Milarepa. So he's a little bit displeased, and he did a little bit, and so he didn't receive any Dharma teachings from Rinpoche, but didn't make a Dharma connection with him. So Ngotshadam Dorje, as I mentioned, he was the son of Ngot Chuku Dorje. When he was very young, he met Marpa. So Ngotshadam Dorje was very young. We know how wrathful a person Marpa was. He wasn't an easy guy. And so once Chuku Dorje was receiving a Skuyas Madra Chakasvara empowerment, and he brought his son, Shedan Dorje. When he brought them, he was just a little boy. He was kind of afraid. And during the empowerment, Shedan Dorje came up to him and he climbed up on Marpa's lap and he started pulling on Marpa's beard. He's pulling on these as a joke. And Chuku Dorje was like terrified. Oh my God, he's sweating. He's like, oh my God, what's happening? Because Marpa was really wrathful. The next day, he didn't bring him. He didn't bring him on the second day. He didn't bring him to Marpa. Where's your child? Where's your son? Yesterday, he wouldn't sit still at all. He did all these strange things, so I couldn't bring him. Oh, that's okay. That's not really bring him. In the future, he received teaching, received Dharma from Lama Marpa. In the future, he'll have greater activity than you, so bring him in now. And so even though he was very young, Marpa was very happy to have him in the ranks of people receiving empowerment. So this Ngotshadam Dorje was a great activity. And there was a commentary he wrote on the 50 verses on the Guru. And this is probably the earliest Kagyu commentary on the 50 verses. But we don't have it. I have hope that we can find it, but it seems that most of the Kagyu Gurus who wrote commentaries did see this text. In any case, when we can see this, that there are people who paid really even great attention to even small details about how to follow this. It's like that Rinpoche lacked faith for Milarepa, but sometimes Rinpoche, who was just a little bit, you know how he was. It's like the way he was. Because it was like, I've gone to India. In the old days in India, if you said, I've gone to India, it's like he was like the people consider he was like more. He's such a great, he'd gone to Longdipa. It's like he was showing off a little bit. And he kind of sort of forgot about, he got excited about that, and he forgot about Milarepa. And Lama Ngokpa, Ngotshadam Dorje said, what's happening here? The most kind one to him was Milarepa. He's not speaking about him. He's saying all these things about Tipupa. Lama Merpa, and so he didn't, Ngotshadam Dorje take any Dharma teachings from him. So we will continue now. So it says, being extremely respectful in your physical behavior. Whatever is offered to the master or else is given by the Guru. The intelligent bow to them and give and accept it with both hands. First of all, to explain it according to the Sanskrit commentary, Hiryat Kanchit, it says whatever. It's this word. But the phrase chungze, or kanchit, the word kanchit is there. So it's the yat, the what, but not the whatever. But it is in the Sanskrit commentary. So when you say whatever, means the offerings. So the what means the offering, and then whatever is just a little bit. So whatever, even small amount. So something is, when you're offering something to Guru, or whether they're giving it down, So if you're giving whatever you're offering to the guru, or if the guru is giving you even a small thing, no matter what, for all of them, you should simply intelligent bow to them and give or accept it with both hands. So you respectfully prostrate, and then with your two hands, you accept it or you give it. Whether you're offering it, you prostrate and you offer it with both hands. And when you're accepting it, then you prostrate and accept it with both of your hands. The intelligent students do this. Even if you take it according to Lord Tsongkhapa's commentary, whatever you offer to the guru, an intelligent students bow respectfully and offer it with both hands. Not only that, whatever the guru gives you, they should bow and accept it with both hands. And Shaloksa's translation says, the intelligent bow to them and give or accept it with both hands. It's easy to understand. And it makes the Tibetan translation is easier to understand like this. So whether you're offering, you need to prostrate and offer with both hands. And when the guru is giving you a gift, you need to prostrate and accept the gift with your two hands. So like that, this is a good place to leave it for tonight. And so then on the 28th, we will complete the text.